Hello, we're on episode 3. In the last episode, we got the level set up, we made a key, we made a player, and we made a solid block. So in this episode, we're going to start having a look at getting the player moving about. So we're going to click on Object Player, and I'll try and explain a few different ways we can do this and how Gamemaker works and how you can do things simply, but also I'm going to show you how we're going to code it in. So before we get into the code, I just wanted to show you some simple things that we could actually do just to show how it could work. So in here, the player, we're going to click Add Event, and we're going to click Key Down Right. So key down right. And now we are going to be using GML code, but there is also a visual language as well. We're not going to actually be doing it this way, the way I'm showing you right now. I just wanted you to have a little bit of an overview of how easy you could actually start to do things. So I'm just going to use the visual one just as a demonstration. So we've got, these are the events, and one of the events, we can have lots of them. This particular event is the right key has been pressed, and then that will run whatever this is. Now, these are blocks, so we could actually use these blocks. And if I wanted to move the player, I could type in move, and then I could set the direction, I could set the speed. So let's just set the direction. Let's have a look. Let's just set the speed. The direction is horizontal. The speed is, I don't know, 2. And then we can run it. So if I press the right key, the character moves to the right. Now obviously it's gone off the screen because there's no collision, but that's all I had to do. Didn't need any coding. So let's just think about how we'd get it to move left. We'd do the same thing, add an event, key down, left. We could do the visual scripting. We could make the whole game this way. But it's not very scalable for really understanding what's going on. So we'll do the same thing for speed. This time we're going to do -2. So +2 makes it go to the right, -2 will make it go to the left. So we're looking at the X coordinate, and it's going to be horizontal again. We run it, and now I can go right, I can go left. So we could do this. This would be really nice and easy. It's fine. But as the game gets more complicated, there's more and more things to think about. So we're going to leave that type of programming alone for now. Start by building up the game in some code. So I'm just going to, you can actually convert that to code, but I'm just going to delete it. And we're going to look at some other really crucial events. So the first event we're going to look at that's really critical is the create event. And we're going to use GML code for that. So the create event is where we actually set all the properties of that object. So we're going to put a comment in. It's where the player starts off and sets all the variables. Now we're going to need a few things. we're going to need speed. Now if we type speed, there's a built-in speed and I don't want to mess with that, so I'm just going to use SPD for speed. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. We've got an error at the moment because this is a variable and I've not told it it's worth anything. So I liked the speed of 2 before, so we'll give it a speed of 2. So we've just created a speed of 2. So a speed of 2. You don't have to put the comments in. Then what I'm going to do is a little bit of a trick, a little bit of an easy way to program. So I'm going to do x speed is 0 and y speed is 0. So x is going to deal with horizontal and y is going to deal with vertical, so gravity and falling and jumping. And this is how fast the player is going to move, but we're going to use this for directions. So we're going to have -1 for left, 0 for stop, and +1 for right. So if I got the number 2 and we were stopped, I could times the number 2 by 0 and that would give me 0. If we were going right, we could times the number 2 by 1 and get 2. And if we were going left, we could times it by -1 and get -2. So we can actually use these 3 numbers to control the speed. So that's pretty much it for now. I'm going to also put in the key is false. We don't have a key. I'm just going to make that up. We don't have a key. So have we collected the key? The key. So no, we haven't collected the key. Don't have to put that in yet. We're not going to use it yet, but I'm just going to put it in there. So when the player is created, when that level is loaded and it makes the player object, it will run this code and it will create these variables. So that's a key part of every object. The next part of every object is the step. So we'll do a step. I'll put here step phase. So in the step phase, this description, by the way, will go in here so you can see it. In the step phase, we do all the calculations about that object. Has the key been pressed? Has it moved? Has it? And so on. And then in another phase, the character will be drawn. So they're separate. So what we need to do, we need to check has, click on here, has a key been pressed? So let me zoom in again. So these double slashes are for comments. This triple one is for the part at the start. So has a key been pressed? So we can say we're going to get the keys, then we're going to change the speed of the player. So I'll just show you how this would work. So in the create we had speed and x speed. So if I took the player's position, which is x, and added x plus equals 1. If I add 1 to the x position inside this step and run it, the character will move on its own. If I take away 1 and run it, it will move the other way. So this is being run every single frame. So what we want to do is get the key that's been pressed and change the speed of the character to match using these values. So we're going to use var left equals keyboard, and we've got lots of different things that will come up. We're going to use the keyboard check, so you can just click on it. We're going to use the ordinal character A, so you could use that. Careful with your brackets. Like in any programming, if you open a bracket, you must have a closing bracket to match it. And again, so we've got, if we press the left key, well, if the A key is pressed, I should say, then it'll store it in the value left. So if it's not been pressed, it will be 0, and if it has been pressed, it'll be 1. Var right equals keyboard check ord, and then we'll do D. So if the D key's been pressed, so we could have both of them pressed, and that would be fine. So once you've got that, we can do a bit of a weird calculation. And this might look a bit weird. The direction equals right minus left. So this is probably one of the hardest parts of the whole project to understand. What does this mean? So I'm going to explain it fully because I don't want to leave it just being there without you knowing what it means. So calculate the direction. So if, let's say, we pressed the right key, okay, if we pressed the right key, then we haven't pressed A, so that would be 0. But if we've pressed right, that would be 1. So we'd then do a calculation. We'd do, the right key would be 1, and we'd minus 0. So the answer is 1. And we know that 1 is right, and we times that by the speed. Let's say we pressed left. So if we pressed left, that would be a 1, and that would be a 0. And then the calculation would be 0 minus 1. And the answer to that would be minus 1. So that would be the minus 1 on here. So we can use just these two, take them away to find out whether we're moving or not. Now the other situation is that we don't press any of them. So we get 0, whoops, what have I done? 0, I moved my mouse that way. 0 minus 0, and that would give us 0. So let me write these in. You don't have to write all this in. I'm just putting this in so we're very clear about what's happening. There's not a lot of code, but it's really important we can try and understand what's really happening here. So here we're taking the two values, whether we've pressed the keys or not, using this here to calculate whether we're moving right, left or stopped. And of course, if they're both 1s, well, it would be 1 minus 1 is 0. So if you press them both, they cancel each other out. So check A key, and then check D key. Okay, so now that's done, let's just see if we can use that to move the character. So let's do X, that's the character's position, horizontal position, plus equals, so we're going to add to it this number here, and this number is stored in X direction. So whoops, if we get that value, so that value will either be 1, -1 or 0, and if we add that number onto your current position, it will move. So for instance, let's say you're at 50. If you're at 50 and you've moved right, it will add 1. So you'll now be at 51. If you're at 50 and you move left, you'll add -1. So that will be 49. And if you're at 50 and you've not moved, then you'll still be at 50. So that's how we can use that to calculate your position. So let's give that a try, and we'll probably stop there for today because that's quite a bit we've done. So let's press A. Yeah, it moves the other way. So that's fully working. It is a bit slow because we're only moving 1 pixel at a time. So to move 2 pixels at a time, we're going to times it by speed. So speed was that number here, speed. And I could have just put ×2. That would work the same. So now we'll move twice as fast. But the disadvantage of doing that way is I've got to find it in the code every time. So I put speed, and then if I want to come into the settings for the player, I can just change it. So let's say I wanted it really fast at 10, which would be ridiculous. We can just change the speed in here rather than having to go and try and look through all the code, because there is going to be more code. So that's it for this episode. It's quite complicated code, I guess, if you've not seen this before. So as a very quick summary, we created some settings for the player. When the player's created, we set the speed. We've got an X and a Y speed. We've not collected the key. And then in the step, the game loop, every single frame, we check if the key's been pressed, and then we do this calculation, and then we can change the speed. We've got other things to do in here, like check if you've run into a wall, because at the moment, if I put the blocks back on and run it, these walls don't matter at the moment because we've not actually checked for any collision. So that will be in the next episode. We're going to check for collision. So we won't actually move if we can't move. So let's do check for collision. We'll do that first before we move, because we don't want to move if there's something in the way. So I'm going to leave it there, and I shall see you in the next episode.